Welcome to this episode of Life Science Success. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I'm a digital marketer. And before we get started with our interview today, I have a quick message from our sponsor.
Episode of Life Science Success is brought to you by D3 Digital Media Marketing. Dive into the digital world with confidence and creativity on your side. D3 Digital Media Marketing is your all-in-one solution for making a lasting impact online. From the vibrant, engaging world of social media marketing, podcasts, and webinars, to the strategic depths of website development, SEO, pay-per-click, email, and content marketing, we tailor our approach to fit your unique brand story. Let's elevate your presence, connect with your audience, and drive success together. Your digital journey starts here. Visit d3digitalmedia.com to learn more. This episode of What?
So with that, let me quickly introduce our guest for today. It is Vance Lyon. He's an accomplished chemist with an impressive career spanning 4 decades in the life sciences industry. He was born and raised on the north side of Chicago, which gives some synergy with me as well. And Vance earned his BS in chemistry from the University of Chicago and went on to complete a PhD at the University of Utah. So welcome, Vance.
Thank you very much, Don. Thank you. So
Yeah.
I need to correct one thing. It's not actually, I put the north side of Chicago. It's actually the northern suburbs. Not the main streets of Chicago, but
Yeah, there you
suburbs
go.
nearby. So.
Yeah, I grew up in Northwest Indiana, so
Okay.
I constantly feel that synergy with that area, and certainly whenever we get a chance to go home and visit, it's always a lot of fun to make it to the city as well. So
Very nice. It's a fun place to be. Left there
yeah,
a long time ago, but it's nice to go back and visit. So yes,
yeah,
thank you.
for sure. So Vance, would you mind just taking a little bit of time and telling listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you. I grew up, as I said, on the suburbs north of Chicago, in a town called Morton Grove. Went to a small parochial school for grade school, and went off to Niles West High School in Skokie, Illinois. Proud to say, an alumnus of the same school that uh, our Attorney General is from, Merrick Garland. And from there, went on to the University of Chicago. Studied chemistry at the University of Chicago, and also um, got into some literature and English at the same time, just because the science was a little bit overwhelming at sometimes. Um, in 1980, based on a couple of recommendations, I went off to the University of Utah, where I studied organic chemistry, synthetic organic chemistry. I should say that back at Chicago, I was influenced by Professor Philip Eaton, who was one of the greatest chemistry teachers I ever had. He taught a very interesting class on essentially the philosophy of synthetic chemistry, synthetic organic chemistry, which is a very interesting way to look at it certainly from a University of Chicago perspective. So he was a great teacher. And I went on to Utah. I worked with a gentleman named William Epstein, who was an extremely good chemistry teacher. Maybe not a very good grant writer. So I spent a lot of time in graduate school teaching. Um, Won the teaching award one year. So I'm pleased about that. And in 1987, I moved on to, back to my life in general. While in Utah, I got married to my wife, Heidi. We have 2 children, son 36 and a daughter 32.
Nice.
And we'll be celebrating our 40th anniversary this Sunday. So,
well, congratulations on that. That's a definite, great milestone as well. So congratulations.
And if you're familiar with James Joyce and Ulysses, it's actually the 120th anniversary of Bloomsday this coming Sunday. So,
oh, very nice. All right.
For what that's worth, anyways.
So tell me a little bit about, I mean, out of all the topics that you could choose, as you get ready to get into any particular field, what directed you towards, organic chemistry or even life sciences at the end?
When I started college, I think I started college in 1976, and if anybody can remember back that far, virtually the only thing anybody wanted to do at that time when they went to college was go into medical school.
Mm.
And I started at college to go, intending to go to medical school. I did some volunteer work very early on in my freshman year in college, and realized in an emergency room setting, with helping some children that were in having some issues, shall we say, that medicine probably was not the right thing for me. It was a pretty frightening episode for me at the time. But um, I've always been interested in the sciences. I've always done well in math, chemistry, and science and physics. Actually, I think I probably, in younger days, I probably did better in physics, and I was probably more interested in chemistry just because it was a little bit more challenging, a little bit more interesting, and frankly, I've always liked the way colors change and things like that in chemistry. So it's, a, it's an interesting way to put things. Synthetic chemistry is an interesting way to look at things from both an artistic point of view as well as a scientific point of view. I think so. It's an interesting field. So
Yeah, I mean it's not, I mean it's certainly not the direction that I went. But I mean I certainly remember, days in chemistry class and, people demonstrating different things. And I would imagine one of those demonstrations for a lot of people probably turned on that light that was just like, oh, I want to go do that.
yeah.
So yeah, I can certainly understand that. Can you talk a
I
little bit
also
about?
have a brother. I should just mention I have a
Sure.
brother who's 10 years older than me, who's a PhD chemist as well, and he was more the traditional real chemist, well, to be honest, making explosives and things like that in the
Huh.
backyard. So
Yeah, I have a child who like to do that same thing and seem to he's not a chemist today, but he he like to do that same thing. So, can you
mhm.
talk a little bit about your time at Parish Chemical, um, and how your role evolved there?
Right, I certainly can. I I took that job in 1987. It was a fairly bad market at the time, job market. And I was a little bit nervous. As I said, I'd been teaching a lot in graduate school. I was concerned about getting a position. I took a position at Parish Chemicals, a small company just south of Salt Lake City in the Provo area. Um, and it was a school essentially connected with BYU. They had the capacity for making large scale chemistry, which they didn't do very much of at the time I started, but they had some small scale stuff as well. They specialized in some crown ether chemistry that came out of BYU, as well as a number of really terrible smelling thiol compounds that they were working on. Um, I worked there, made a number of their catalog compounds for a few years. We were selling things to Aldrich and whatnot. And we got into they had some opportunities. For instance, there was a opportunity in some of the projects, I should say. I just moved from the development, and I also worked out in the plant. We had equipment up to 2,000 liters, 500-gallon equipment, so we could produce 100 kilos at a time, 200 kilos at a time, something like that. Um, and got some experience there. We we had a visit from a rocket company one time, about 2 years after I'd been there. A rocket company in Utah that you've heard of. Well, it's changed names a dozen times since then, probably. But um, they came down and they had an interesting proposal to talk to, a request for proposal. And we discussed that, and we were very interested, and told them we were very interested in it. And then the next day, we sat down in the president's office of the company and talked about the same project again and how interesting it was. And finally, the third day, talked about it a little bit. And I said, well, it is interesting. Is somebody going to call the customer back? Because nobody even thought about. I mean, there's crazy marketing idea that, hi, we're located in the middle of Utah, nowhere, and everybody's going to be coming to us. It was a strange idea, and it had something to do with the bankruptcy that I helped pull them out of. So, anyways, we took on that project, made some very interesting things, and the company came out of bankruptcy. We did some nice chemistry. I was working I was meeting some people in the pharma industry, so we were starting to put together some, what I would call at this point, low quality systems that could be improved. One of the things that I was proud of was that the quality system DuPont we were a DuPont approved supplier with a quality system that, frankly, I put together. I put together most of the quality system which was not followed by many of the people there, but put together the quality system as well as a fairly good marketing program for them. But it came time to leave after a while. I actually went back to the university. I had about 3 or 4 months of work to finish up, and finished up the work, left there, and took my next job. So,
Very
while
nice.
while my family was moving, I wrote my thesis in St. Louis. So.
So I'd imagine that leads us to my next question, which is really, what are some of the key experiences that you had at Chemer Polytech
Yeah, it's
Labs
Premier
in St.
Polytech.
Louis? And, yeah,
It's a little analytical company. I took that job kind of on 2 misconceptions. First misconception was that analytical chemistry was just as interesting as organic chemistry. That was not true, but I was glad I could learn as much of it as I did. I have a lot of experience now with analytical things that I didn't necessarily know about. The second misconception is that well, my father just passed away, and I wanted to be closer to my mother, who was in the Chicago area, and I was somewhat mistaken about how close St. Louis and Chicago are to each other. So, anyways,
yeah.
I was there for a couple of years, and then what did we do there? The major accomplishment I had there is I was the quality director while we went through a 4-day FDA audit,
Hmm.
a successful FDA audit. We received 2 483s, which were very, very minor, unlabeled acetone wash bottle, which didn't have the expiration date on it. But as I said, analytical chemistry really wasn't for me, um, and I was very interested in what I had seen at Davos and the custom synthesis business, which was frankly was at a fairly early stage at that point. This would go back to 1998. So
Yeah. So how is your role? I mean, so then you transitioned to Davos, and so how's your role evolved since then? So
yeah,
what
well, I
yeah,
joined Davos. I had seen them at trade shows when I was at Parrish and things like that. I'd seen them, and they did it was impressive to see them because you'd have a room full of booths and some people uninterestedly walking past and things like that, and you'd see their booth and they were always full of people. um, it's a simple thing, but when you have a trade show, you set things up ahead of time and you look busy and you get busier because of it. And
sure.
it's a simple thing, but it was not something I understood at the time back when I started at Davos. But so I wanted to join there. In 19, the company was about 25 years old when I joined at Davos. We were going through a period of growth, which I'll go into a little bit more later. But really, it was a time that the custom synthesis business was really starting. We were working with large pharma. We had business with Bristol at the time. We had a lot of business with Merck and Pfizer, which I'll get into in a bit. But most of it was custom synthesis of intermediates. Um, we were in 1998. We knew some people out at Agaron out in California, and I consider Agaron one of the first biotechs, really. Agaron had developed the HIV drug Virusept, which was about the second or third one, I believe. And they had a really good synthesis for the material, and they had a good supplier for it, and the drug got approved, and they had capacity for about 5 tons a year, which really wasn't anything. And
Mm,
so we took that drug, and in the course of 18 months, took it to 100 tons a year. So I think that was an important time. And that was really one of the first APIs, advanced pharmaceutical ingredients, um, that we made. Um, and my first project, what I started at Davos, was to do the same thing. Sestiva was coming out of DuPont Pharma at the time, and we provided one of the suppliers for Sestiva to increase the capacity greatly for that. So, and that
Yeah.
those were my early projects. But at the time, so that was simply a chemistry exercise, chemistry and marketing, just finding the customer and then searching for them. About the same time, though, as we were starting to make advanced intermediate and advanced drugs, people wanted formulation, and over time, I've learned a lot about formulation as well as earlier studies. So we're now in a position at Davos where we can essentially meet any requirement that a young company has. So most of our
Yes.
business is with biotech. So
So let's talk a little bit about that. So at Davos, particularly for emerging companies, tell me a little bit more about the services that you provide.
right. Um, Davos provides services from suppliers that we've come to meet over time, come to trust. Um, our initial business, as I say, is really chemistry and the biology to make the drug itself and do the formulation, make the pharmaceutical ingredient, the drug substance, as well as the drug product. Um, we have the capabilities of doing all the early tox work as well as ADME work and PK work. These are all with suppliers that we've met over around the world. Um, we have two suppliers in particular that um, we are hooked to. NCK is a company um, in Denmark. We consider them some of the best process chemists and best people for making an API in the world. They've done a great job. They've never been late with a delivery or out of spec with the delivery of material. And there's a company in India, Anthem Biosciences, that really has the capabilities of doing virtually anything. A company of about 3,000 people. We worked with those two companies the entire time I've been at Davos. So we also have other suppliers that if somebody needs an intermediate, we have the capabilities of providing intermediates from a variety of geographical locations with proven suppliers. Um, we do a lot of work in India, a lot of work more work. We tend to work in general the way the pharmaceutical industry does. Intermediates coming out of China and or India, and APIs coming out, drugs coming out of Europe or the North America, and the formulation normally in North America. So um, I think when we're finding these suppliers, we're looking for suppliers that we can trust, that will have the capabilities of meeting what we're looking for. Uh, they're very advanced companies. So um, learned I've learned an awful lot more than chemistry over the years, is what I can say. So it's a lot of the formulation. I assume the formulation was very easy, but it's not nearly as easy as it is. Um, we tend to uh, we tend at Davos to not be the first choice that places will go to. Some people have concerns about the fact that we are in between the supplier and the customer. We set up the program so that there is complete transparency for scientific. We have calls and everything like that. So we provide a good services for the for our customers.
I'd imagine there's a benefit to that as well, in not having to manage and look for all these independent pieces yourself, right? And
We like to
having
think so. Yes.
yeah, and having to pull everything together. So it's I would imagine it has to depend, a little bit. And I run into this myself as well, right? I mean, there are plenty of people that say, "Hey, look, I'm just going to go do this myself," and then they do, and then they find
Hmm.
out that it's things are a little more complicated than what they actually you know set out
Right.
to take on, and all of a sudden they're looking back going, gosh, I wish I had somebody that would manage all these
Hmm.
headaches for me. Well, that's kind of what I'm
Yeah.
hearing that Davos does.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we we could bring to the table for the customer, especially for a smaller company. If you're working on the project with Merck or Pfizer or something like that, you don't need to worry about somebody like us pushing in the background. If Merck's at a company, everybody else is second. You can be sure of that. But these organizations like Anthem Biosciences, for instance, that I talked about in India, we're responsible for over half of their business. So if there's an issue, if the customer is not feeling like they're getting what they want, and it's this way at most all of our suppliers, if a customer feels like they're not getting exactly what they want, we're going to be talking to upper management, and we're going to be saying this has got to change. So, and we have the threat, if you will, of not bringing future projects to them. So
yeah. That's, I mean, just so critical as well. So what are some of the more significant projects or achievements that you've been involved in at Davos, and especially in terms of IND or NDA filings?
Right. INDs, I'm trying to get an accurate number, and I've had a lot of trouble with this at Davos. One of my colleagues I know has done about 60 or 70 INDs. I would guess that I've done about 5 INDs a year for the last 20 years or something like that. So I say most of our work is generally, we get started with companies as early as possible. We like to meet companies preclinical if possible, get involved with them. The pharma industry is far too the timelines are too tight to be moving projects all over the place. You got one chance, you do a project once, and then maybe you can move it to a commercial facility, but those are the choices you have. The significant things that we've done, the 2 AIDS drugs that we did back around the year 2000, I think were very important things, just from a sociological point of view. The second one that I mentioned, Sestiva, was in the triple combo. It's no longer in the triple combo, but that drug was used in Africa and all over the world. So that has been a very effective drug in that. One of the, we hear from people that, having something like Davos in between is going to increase costs. We're just going to be adding margins onto the top to make costs. I think one of the best examples of that not being the case is the fact that Davos was involved back in the early 90s, around 95. We did a lot of work with Warner Lambert and got involved with Lipitor when it was a phase 1 drug. And Davos was involved with Lipitor. There were 3 different intermediates that went into Lipitor for the manufacture. We supplied 2 of them at launch, and one of the intermediates we supplied from phase 1 till after the drug went generic. I can assure you that the price dropped dramatically over that time, but I think that's pretty impressive that we could stay involved in that project for 20 years or whatever it was. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you share more about go ahead.
Yep. A couple more things. We also had some important things. We were involved. We made one of my projects. I was involved with one of the lipids for the COVID vaccine, making that on scale, and we were also involved with the production of remdesivir in the earlier days, in the earlier stages of that drug. So, I think those are all
everybody.
So,
yeah. So could you share with us a little bit more about the marketing services that you provide?
Yeah. We work with our companies. Like I say, we finding a number of companies. We have, I'd say, 2 different groups of suppliers. One of the programs that we have that I have mentioned is really a lab notebook to IND sort of a program where we take care. There might be a dozen, we're going to be making the drug itself. We're going to be putting together something of a supply chain. We're going to be doing the formulation. We're going to be doing the tox work. We're going to be doing some of the ADME work before. So we're bringing together 10, 15 different companies of things. And we're working on this back at Davos. We're putting together all that information. It's coming on Davos letterhead, but you're getting all the original data and everything like that. So you get the package, and that package actually, in some cases, we've written the IND CMC sections for the IND. In some cases, we've actually been in front of the FDA. So our
Mm.
consultants have been in front of the FDA. And one other thing I should say is that we we did the same sort of a program for a couple assets coming out of big pharma. This is a somewhat different. We tend to be working with biotechs going into big pharma rather than things coming out of big pharma. So, but we took a couple of phase 2 assets. Everything had been done by a large pharma up to phase 2. And we took those drugs, completed all the testing, and took them all the way to launch, including the formulation work. They wanted it to act within a half hour. We got the timing down to 15 minutes. And these are both launch drugs that we're manufacturing. We actually put together a supply chain, I should say, an alternate supply chain where the drug itself could come out of India or Europe at the same, either way, because we had intermediates and things that could make the API in either place. So.
I mean, it's I would imagine it's an important resource for everybody to have when you can, be inside of a large pharma company, and if you don't have enough assets or enough resources to be able to go and help get your particular drug to market, then
Mm-hmm.
it sounds to me like a great advantage to leverage companies like Davos as well.
It works well, I think, for smaller companies because there's a lot of things to oversee that you don't see. One thing I haven't mentioned is logistics. At Davos, we work on our logistics director. Is a wonderful lady. Just retired at Christmas time at the end of the year. But we replaced her with 2 gentlemen who we've been training for a total of 8 years to replace her. So it gives you an idea. Let's just say that 20 and 21 were not fun times to be shipping things from, particularly cold items from around the world. So,
Yeah, yeah, I'll bet a lot to overcome there.
yes.
So Vance, in this next section of the interview, I'm just going to focus on you. What's the best leadership advice that you've ever received?
I've been looking at this question since the first time you mentioned it to me. I don't know I can tell you exactly who the person was or anything like that. Um, I would guess it was probably that what I started at Davos is just to, and it's something I'd learned earlier on than that. It's just to listen to what people have to say. Because I mean, our job at Davos, one of the things we can do when I might see a company, small company, and look at them and say, wow, I know exactly where we could make this drug. I know exactly where we could do the formulation for this. And then we can go walk into the office, get an appointment, which is not trivial these days, and go into the office and say, I can help you with this formulation. And the guy says, well, I know all about the formulation, but I'm having this issue. Or you're talking to somebody and 5 minutes later, you find out that, yeah, everything, this is perfect, but oh my goodness, there's this little issue over here. And we probably have a way to help that. We're not generally the first choice for a lot of people, except unless they've worked with us. If they've worked with us, they tend to come back. Our best recommendation, our best marketing really is the people we've worked with in the past.
Yeah.
That being said, going back to your marketing question, we're a nationwide company. We're in Boston, we're in California, we're in Denver, we're in North Carolina. We belong to all those different organizations, and we're working on media to try and attack all those markets at the same time. And I expect we may have some discussions on that topic later. So,
That'd be great.
but I think
Yeah.
just listening to what people are talking, find out something about the people and then find out what they're interested in. So,
Yeah,
what
I
they
mean,
need.
I think and it's funny to me how we oftentimes as humans, right, our brains try to simplify things as best as possible, and that summary engine that we have inside of our brain, I feel like leads to an inference for a particular meeting or whatever, and it could cut off that ability to really be able to walk into a meeting and listen.
Right.
Or really understand exactly what it is that somebody's struggling with, and that bigger struggle might actually lead to, more ability to work with somebody as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what inspires you?
I like being outside. It's I like listening to music and things like that. Those are the inspirational things to me. I like getting up in the morning. The work I do at Davos, I when I put a list of things together in my head, which I'm very good at, um, I like to get those things accomplished. And
Mm,
there there's something very, very satisfying about meeting somebody's demands on making something. Just making the API, the drug substance, against what is always a very, very, like I say, much of the work we do is in phase one. There's never any time in phase one deliveries.
mm,
Everybody needs the material immediately. And their specs are higher than they probably should be at that point, and working through all those things, and then the inevitable week long waiting for the material to get into the U.S. Those are very painful things for me until they're accomplished. So and I find great joy when they're accomplished. So
great.
I like to
Thank,
satisfy customers that way.
thank you for sharing that. What concerns you?
Our country right now,
Mm,
frankly. Um, I I'm concerned about the separation of people in this country, and the what I see as the dumbing down of America. But I the one of the things that I find really interesting. I lived in New York and was calling on companies all up and down the coast, in the New Jersey, New York area, and San Diego and San Francisco, calling on companies. You have this giant area you have to go after, but it's nice in this area here in Colorado. You got this rather contained area. It's just not like Boston quite, but it's closer to Boston than anything else, where you can walk from one place to another and see 7 companies on the way. So what concerns me, though, I think that I get very concerned with the idea of the Supreme Court overruling the FDA. I find is a very troubling thought. So
yeah. Yeah. I find it interesting. I find it interesting as well that, oftentimes we have individuals, I'll just list it that way, that jump to a conclusion one way or another based on inputs that they've gotten without actually taking a look at the fact. And yesterday in my interview with Sam Clark, he had said, "Hey, look, one of our main tenets of our company is this idea that you can have an opinion, but you have to have an opinion with data. And if you don't come with the data, then I'm sorry. You have an
hmm
opinion, and you might have a history and other things, and all of that's great, but you need to come with a little bit more substantiation, at least in terms of the things that you're inferring. And I felt like that was it's an important point, not just for companies but also for
oh
for our government as well. So yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I see these areas. The Boulder area is a very growing area. I see a lot of excitement here. It's very interesting. So
Yeah.
I'm very optimistic about this area, and I think the Boulder area is going to be a growing area. I think that by very virtue of the politics, if you will, I think this country is closing down the number of places where you can do things like pharma research. I don't.
Mm. So
So
last question, what excites you?
what excites me? It goes back to what you said before. With work, I like making deliveries. Well, that's not true. But the idea, you get a call from a company and say, "I want this compound," and you say, "Oh, right," and that's the thrill of the chase, I guess. Really, finding something. finding something new and exciting, because we're not looking at simple old molecules at Davos. We're doing antibody drug conjugates. We're doing LNP formulations. We're doing all sorts of stuff like that. So you know, it's exciting being on the cutting edge of that kind of stuff, and being part of it. So, and it's it's fun. It excites me out of here. Outside of that, I like bike riding. I like catching fish on the Eagle River. So
Very nice. Well, Vance Lyon, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success Podcast. I really appreciate you being here and for telling me about Davos Pharma and the work that you're doing there. And yeah, I wish you luck in all your future ventures.
I appreciate your time. It's good to talk to you, and hope to be talking to you again soon. So thank you.
Thank you.